Welcome to Moss Marketing Mondays, aka the M3 Podcast. Brought to you by Moss Marketing Group, bringing you everything marketing every Monday. Stay tuned for marketing tips and tricks you can use today. The M3 Podcast, marketing knowledge to help you succeed. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the M3 Podcast. I'm thinking we need to get that intro changed up a little bit because I don't know how much marketing knowledge they're going to get today.
I feel like we haven't talked about marketing in a while.
Yeah, we might need to get that fixed sometime soon. But this week, we got Ricky on from the MMG squad, and we got Caleb and Brandon from SK Mechanic. So I feel like recently we've been having podcasts that in the beginning, it was all people that I had great relationships with, that I'd known for quite a while. I knew the story behind everything. And now we're having these just truly organic podcasts with people that we don't know the whole story. So as it's coming to us on the episode is the first time we're hearing it. And Caleb, you and I talked, what was that, last week?
Yep.
Last week. So we talked last week at your shop and getting everything onboarded. And it was something that just at that point I knew that I was like, this dude has a lot of it factor. And I mean, Brandon, you and I talked up front, and I was like, these dudes would be great to have on the podcast. So I appreciate you guys being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So at the beginning of the podcast, we always kind of start off with, where'd your guys' stories start? And I know we have people on all the time that are all over the spectrum that are in their 20s, their 30s, their 50s, their 60s. So we have people all the way up the board. So your guys' stories are still new. So who wants to start? Who's taking the lead?
You got it.
All right, Caleb's got it. Where does the story start? I'm speechless right out the gate.
Yeah. Where do you want me to start? Like
From the beginning,
story,
dude.
Yeah.
Business story.
Like, where were you born?
Olathe. Yeah.
Olathe. The whole career is in Olathe.
Yeah. Born and raised in Olathe.
Born and raised. You went to Olathe High. Or what are the schools out there?
Yeah, Olathe North.
They got different.
There's like 5 of them now.
Yeah. Kearney, we just had one. There was no
Just the
North or
one.
so.
Oh yeah.
I think Clay Center only had one school.
Yeah,
right?
we only had one.
Yeah, all 7 of them were in that one school. So you go to Olathe. What does it look like coming out of high school?
So out of high school, I mean, typical. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do with my life. I had one really good mentor and friend that was my teacher in auto collision, and kind of gave me a push or some guidance, and I got my my first truck when I was 16 years old and was fascinated with it and wanted to know everything I could about cars. So
yours started before you were out of high school. So
Yeah.
when did you get into that? Like in the body collision side, that mentor, did you have that as a class in high school?
yeah,
What?
yeah. So that was Mill Creek. What was it? It was Mill Creek.
Probably like technical center. Or
Yeah, it was
something like
VOTEC.
that.
No, I
And
don't think we had that.
So I had an older teacher, but then I had he was like a helper that was only 3 years older than us, but he went out to Wyotech for school, graduated there, and then came back and got offered a job. And my teacher, the older gentleman, was phenomenal. He was great, been in industry, ran shops, but it was awesome connecting with someone who was just a couple years older than all of us. And so basically the story goes that I was a young teenage knucklehead, and so it starts in junior year, and you can do junior year and senior year. My junior year, kind of being a knucklehead and skipping school, but I loved cars. I loved auto collision. So I'd show up for collision, which was in the afternoon, and I hadn't gone to school in the morning. Now, I did well academically in school, so I could still finagle my way into getting good grades, so I never got caught. Well, finally, I shouldn't say never, but it took a long time to get caught. So the school would call Mill Creek, and Michael Carrier is his name, and he came to me and he's like, hey, He's like, if you don't start going to school, you can't come here either. And I'm like, oof. I'm like,
I actually like coming here.
yeah, I'm like, that's kind of a deal breaker, my guy. So I gotta start showing up. And he just basically told me, he's like, I can see it in you, and you got a bright future. Pull your head out of your ass. I was like, all right. I'm like, this is gonna be the way. So basically, through summer is when I ended up getting the Camaro, the Mullet Bullet, and
We're gonna link a photo of it right here.
yeah, those videos from today. So,
Which is not what it looked like when you got it.
yeah,
just to
no,
clarify.
not at all.
You need to send us a photo of when you first got it.
Oh,
Then we can link.
I got plenty.
We'll put a before and after on here.
Yeah. So that was when I got even more interested in cars and just turned everything around. The next year I was the shop foreman for all the kids, and we had 20 plus kids. As much as a student can do, I ran the whole program and took care of everything in the shop, made sure the shop was clean, got to work on my own projects while they had to do school projects.
What's a school project that they're working on at a?
Um,
Is it just collision side or?
So I was just on the collision side, but there was other sides too. There was the mechanical side, which is where Brandon attended. But later on, they built a new facility right after I left, state of the art, and they called it OATC. That's where Brandon went. So after I went to Salina Area Technical College to get certified in collision and paint, and started in a couple small shops, and was just like, man, this isn't fast enough paced for me. You know, they want the typical, you start from the bottom and work your way up, and I'm too ambitious for this. I can't take it. So perfect timing. Mike actually reached out to me and said, hey, I got an offer from this hot rod shop, and it looks super promising. Not going to be good money, but the future's super bright, and we could do something awesome. So we started building 67 through 69 Camaros, the first Gen F bodies. And
So they were specialized in just that.
yep.
Wildly specific. That's
Yep.
awesome.
And the market for them was huge. So it was the Tri-5 Chevys, 55, 56, 57 Chevys, and then also the first Gen F bodies were just insane, blowing up. And
So, yeah.
people would pay big money for them.
I look at it as like if we had a client come our way and they're like, hey, we work on these 2 years or 3 years of cars, I'd be like, come again?
So the backstory on it, we built whole brand new cars. They didn't bring us a car.
You built the whole entire car from scratch.
The entire
Like
car.
some of these cars that would show up at this shop got drug out of a ditch where they had sat for the last 30, 40 years
But would you have like a frame to go off of?
sometimes.
Kind of. Yeah, parts of a frame, I guess you could say. Most of it was just rot. And the ones we started with were the worst of the worst, the cheapest that my boss could get. So we started on it, and it was taking us like 3 weeks to build a whole new one. And it was at least 90% new sheet metal on the whole body. So he comes to us and says, hey, this isn't working. We need to speed it up.
Gosh, that sounds like that's really fast.
Yeah, that's what I kind of
Maybe I
thought.
just have no context, but
I was like, 3 weeks build a car? Sounds
Whoa.
fast.
So this is just the body of the car. This isn't the drivetrain, suspension, steering, none of that. Just a whole brand new clean body, no rust. Basically a new 69 Camaro. 69 was the most popular body that you could start with and build it however you wanted. Old school look, all the new performance modifications and creature comforts. So I went home, studied, found old pictures of how GM did it, and I built what we called jigs or fixtures. And what you would do, it had all these pickup points that would pick up on the frame, the body, and you could take all brand new sheet metal, lay it out, and weld up a whole new one. And it turned our 3 weeks into 3 days.
We thought 3 weeks sounded fast.
3 days.
How's 3
insane.
days sound?
3 days we could pump out a car.
That's what you call efficiency and figuring out a process that works. Like, there's a reason Ford, GM, and those guys have figured out how to pump thousands of cars out in a day. It's because of that kind of thinking.
Yeah. So on these ones, depending on how far the customer wanted to go, we had different stages. So you could get like a stage 1 that was just a clean metal body. It would ship off across the country. They could do their own body work, paint, choose all their suspension, steering, engine, all the drivetrain.
So what's a body like that cost?
I think at that point we were like around 15 or 20.
Like 1,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Just making sure I was on the right page.
the thing is, I came to find out later, Boss Man wasn't exactly ethical on a lot of stuff, and kind of kept us in the dark. Granted, I was 20 years old, so I don't know a ton of the number stuff, but I know several of the builds when they wanted to go stage 3, which was the brand new body, body work, paint, wheels, tires, drivetrain, literally everything. Pick it up turnkey. Several of those were 100 to 150,000. So
you're kicking out A++ work.
yeah, so super cool, like typical shit you'd see on TV. And it got to a point where we were all like, man, listen, like we've been grinding for you, making all this go round. Like it's time to make a couple bucks or fulfill some of the promises you've made. And he came to us one day and was like, hey, been using the money from other builds to fund other builds. Cash flow isn't really here. So we're bankrupt.
Oh, shit.
And I was, at that point, 21 years old. I just bought my first house. And I was like, okay. I'm like, well, I enjoyed working here. I learned a lot. A huge pivotal moment for me. So also pertains to Mike Carrier. He told me, pull my head out of my ass in high school. At one point I was doing the work on the clean bodies, and I did a repair on a section, just metal work, welding, grinding, making it look like it was perfect. It was seamless. And for whatever reason, I spent a lot of time on it and literally made it perfect. And he pulled everybody aside in the shop and was like, hey, like, you see this? This is what the fuck I'm talking about. He's like, attention to detail is going to take you places. So that was huge for me. After that, when the shop went down, I started doing just work out of my house. Anything anybody wanted done, I'd do it.
So is this doing more on like that collector car space, or are you doing just like normal service work? Like, are you doing body work? Like what?
So a little bit of everything.
Just a little bit of everything?
Yep. If someone I didn't have the room to build an entire hot rod, but if someone brought their hot rod to me and wanted something changed or modified, I'd do that. Any little collision or paint jobs I could pull off, whatever it took, just grinding away. And I built a pretty good social media following with my name, my attention to detail, my skill level, and built the Mullet Bullet pretty close to what it is now. Engine setup was fairly the same, but it was bright orange instead of the matte white.
I like the matte white.
Oh, yeah.
You got to tell the people what the Mullet Bullet is now.
So the Mullet Bullet is a 1987 Chevy IROC. It was bone stocked when I got it. It's been, let's see.
I would say it's far from stock now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's almost nothing left that is stock at this point. It's been 17 years that I've had it, and it's had 10 different engines, same transmissions. But at this point, it is a LS Turbo big tire car. It makes 1,000 horsepower at the tire. It's gone Fastest pass so far was 870 at 156, I think, with me piloting it. Had some crazy rides, done some gnarly wheel stands in it. So yeah, built a really good following with that. And my uncle reached out to me and said, hey, we got this older C4 Corvette that my guys started an LS swap in, and essentially they don't know what they're doing to finish it. So I go to his shop, which the shop I grew up in. He's started SK Mechanic in 1992 and has been at the same location for well over 20 years. So I remember being a kid running around in there. There's gumball machines and arcade games and all kinds of stuff. So I go up there and there's a C4 Corvette, and I don't know if I'd call it an LS swap. I mean, it was kind of like we yanked the old engine out, and this one is just kind of like laying there. So what can you do? And I started just rolling like I normally do, grinding away, and we agreed on a price per hour, and I told him, I'll get it completed for you, and I did in, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks or so. And that was when he approached me and was like, hey, you want a job? And I'm like, man, I don't know. I'm a hot rod builder, like not a general repair mechanic. I'm all self-taught when it comes to the mechanical side. I have a pretty wild, how would I put it? Just my mechanical comprehension is very good about how things operate and work together. And he told me, I'll pay you this. It's a mile from your house. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really think so. And he tells me the final point of, in 5 or 6 years, I'll probably be ready to step away. And I was like, okay. I'm like, that's the kicker, because I want my own deal that we can do the quality, honest work for people on the non-negotiable core values that I stand on as a person, and I want to see that kind of work get done, for everybody. So I started and just hit it literally as hard as I could. Went home, told the girlfriend, hey, Mike, this is a huge opportunity. It's going to suck for a few years. You know me, you've been around me a long time. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this work, and I'm not waiting 5 or 6 years. So went in, cleaned the whole place up while being the lead technician, and whatever it took, literally. I was not a fast technician by any means. I could do my 40 hours in 40 hours and be 1-to-1, but never fast, and I wanted more than that, and I wanted to prove myself. So I'd put in my 60 or 80 hours, whatever it took. And right about a year in, he came to me and said, you've exceeded every expectation I had for you. I think it's time to do this now. And I'm like, whoa, man. I'm like, I'm 26 years old, never owned a business, never ran a business.
Now you're doing it.
Yeah, so you were thinking you'd hit like 3 to 4 years, something like that?
Yeah. I wanted to cut it in half. That was kind of my idea, 2.5, 3 years or so.
And you thought you were going to learn something along that way that was like going to get you ready.
I did.
And then that came, you're like, I still don't think doing this every day was going to teach me what I needed to know.
Right. So at that point, I told him, I'm like, okay, get it all in writing on the deal and what you want to do and what it's going to take to make all this happen. And he brought all that to me, and I said, okay, let me figure my side out on everything. And I told him, let me have 3 months or so and let me kind of, I guess, get an idea and shadow you on how you did all this and try to figure out some of the business operations and numbers and everything, and let me find a lead technician to replace myself. So at that point, I got to hire my first employee, which was wild, you know. I never. You have that wish or goal and you want to get there, but then when it happens, you're like, okay, we're doing this.
It puts a different weight on your shoulders that you're never, like, I don't think you can ever be prepared for.
Correct.
That it was, I think a lot of times when you're out doing things in life, most of the time, no matter how you think about it, you're still doing it for yourself somewhere inside. That once you start hiring people and you start doing that way, you're not doing it for yourself anymore.
Correct.
And I think that's the way I visualize it, and that's the way I feel about it, which I think there are some people out there that don't look at humans as humans.
Sure.
At a point, their numbers on a spreadsheet.
Yep.
But it's like, my deal was when that time came, that was a way bigger thing than anything else I'd ever done. That it was like, these people now have, it's just like if somebody gets married, like you put a lot of weight on that other person and vice versa.
Yeah.
On how one another's going to take care of each other. I feel like that's part of, I feel like that's the way employment should be too, of working within a company.
Yeah.
Is that's a two-way
It's a
street.
true relationship.
It is. And it's like, I think that's the coolest thing I've been able to do
Yeah.
in business.
Yep.
But it's also one of the hardest things to take in the beginning.
Yeah.
Then when I was doing it myself, I'm like, okay, I'm still making enough money. I can survive and everything. And then my first person I hired was my brother. And he comes to the table and I'm like, well, he's got a house payment. And I'm like, now we got to try to figure out how to make that. And then it's like, we're both sitting at a single desk in a bedroom in my house, like trying to figure out like, how does this work? And then it's like, then all of a sudden we have too much work that we can handle. Then we're like, okay, we got to find someone else. And then it was just like, but it was so cool to build this, like, I don't know, it's a culture, it's a family that we've built around it, that I will say when you're growing and it's really fast, sometimes you do lose sight of that a little bit, and it's hard, like you have to try to hone that back in, that sometimes when there's so much workload and everything, you get so integrated in how movement works of business and how when you have new accounts starting, you have old accounts dropping off, you have this and that happening, you're hiring new people, you're onboarding, you're getting into the contract side, you're getting into health insurance. So we're talking about like all these different things. There's so many moving pieces that you never even imagine. Then once those all start moving, you're like, okay, I still need to hone back into what the roots are of what this is.
Yeah.
And that's I think when I came in the other day, which was really cool, is like you guys are right there at that hard root core.
Yeah.
So you hire your first employee. Who was your first one?
So his name was Brett, and he was my lead technician for a couple years. And so my brother came on board with me, not as an owner, but to work at the shop. He would have technically been before Brett. Brett was the lead tech, the first true hire for me. And he ended up bringing on a good friend of ours still who worked at the shop until he got an awesome opportunity recently, last year and a half or so.
Yeah.
Brandon Webb. And at this point we've gotten to myself and then Brandon York here and John and Drew. And it's just maintaining that same, it's cliche to say, but that same family culture, that we do everything together. Like we talked about earlier, watching the UFC fights, all the fun gun stuff. Brandon and I, more so than the other two, but the health and fitness stuff.
Which I think that's something that's unique that you guys have that I don't see a lot in your industry.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think that was very unique that my brother and I come from the car space and we were in the automotive industry and we had a service drive and I haven't seen that in a service drive before.
Yeah. And it's like we talked about the other day of just doing the right thing, just treating people right,
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the biggest things with our culture at the shop that, you could touch on, but I feel I'm pretty good about it with I'm just the one in the back pulling the strings, kind of operating things, but none of this happens without my 3 guys.
Yeah.
It cannot exist. So everybody is crucial and plays their role, and you got to give credit where it's due, you know?
Yeah. I think that goes for every growing business that, I mean, I have meetings all the time and people like want to compliment me and I'm like, don't compliment me. It's everyone that's putting in those work day in and day out. It's the team.
Yeah.
Like it's trying to move a ship across the sea by yourself. You go jump on that ship and you try to row yourself, you're not going to move it.
Yeah. There's 10 things going on. You can't handle all 10.
Exactly. So but you still have to be a captain of that ship to be able to make sure it's going in the correct direction.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people that I think do that poorly, and there's a lot of people I think do it phenomenally. And it's funny, I see a lot of people that do it really well, and I see how much backlash they get from other people. Like, I'll use Andy Frisella. That dude has built, I'm going to say it's similar to a cult, but it's like
100%.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like what he's built and where he is going, but leading that ship and what it needs to be. But there's so much negative backlash about the way he runs and operates. But it's like, dude, who's built, like, I look at it as like running something that way, running from a point of dominance and a point of just pure leadership of what your actions look like day in and day out. That holds weight.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, we've had podcasts with people from S2 and it's like, we've got comments about it and I'm just like, what are you doing?
Sure.
And it's like, but you look at what you guys are building, you look at that as like you are being a captain of that ship. And I feel from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're doing it correctly.
I appreciate it.
And you have a great group of guys around you, and if you can keep that moving and you can keep scaling that, that's how you win.
Yeah, and that's the goal.
I feel like this is the perfect time the timelines are about to intersect here. So we got to get Brandon your backstory before we get to the point where you're joining.
It's going to be a big, huge wreck. And
Yeah. Well,
But they can fix it, so it's okay.
we'll back way up. It's pretty cool. I'll have to show you guys before we leave. So there's quite an age difference between Caleb and I. What is it?
9
9 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I have
are you calling Caleb old?
Yeah, man, pretty much a boomer. Anyways, I got a picture in my phone. I would have been 10 or 11 years old, and Caleb was at my garage at my house. My older brother and him were friends coming out of high school, and so I always idolized my older brother growing up, man. You know, anything he was about, I was about it too. And so him and Caleb always hanging out. I was always, you know, at least at the house, in the room, messing with something, getting yelled at by this guy at 10 years old. And so just having him around was super cool. And as I continued growing into the point where, you know, I'm getting my first job at 14, I start to develop a pretty cool work ethic, you know, full-time job in high school, sophomore through senior year, working really hard, and knew I wanted to kind of do something where I had a say in the mix of what was going to go on. But backing up a little bit here, played sports, you know, elementary school, junior high, high school, loved it all. Couple sports related injuries later, I'm done with it. And so my world was kind of turned upside down then. And my brother and Caleb having messed with cars when I was younger, that was kind of my second thing to fall back on. So that's what I chose to pursue. So, gosh, what would it have been? My senior year of high school, I got a job working at a local dealership in town. Took me exactly 21 days of working there to know that the dealership life was not for me. My third Friday there, I walked out before lunch. But before that, you know, during those 3 weeks and even the few weeks prior, I was up at Caleb's shop every single day, just chasing the guys around, just trying to force my place in there. So as soon as something opened up, they knew who to call. And finally, after having worked at that dealership for a few weeks, Caleb had approached me and said, you know, we got a spot. It's time. We think you're ready, and decided to bring me on. So I actually started at...
There's the collision.
There's the collision we were looking for.
And so I started at the shop as a lube tech, you know, changing oil, doing tires, doing inspections, just kind of working in the trenches. And where moving up to the front office kind of comes into play is, man, it couldn't have even been 3 or 4 months into me working there. Mark, the gentleman that used to run the front, the old general manager of the shop, he was getting ready to go on vacation. And Caleb was like, man, the phones, the customers, dealing with all this, I'm just not looking forward to it. And a previous job I had in high school was selling parts at O'Reilly's. And I'm like, man, it's just talking to people. It can't be that hard. I've been there, done that. I could handle it. And he called my bluff on it and threw me in. And
he's like, I was at O'Reilly's and I had to ask stupid questions. He's like, now I get to ask real questions.
Yeah.
His exact words on it were, put me in, coach.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm assuming you were probably a decent guy at O'Reilly's. Like when you go to get wiper blades, like you got a 4-wheel drive truck or 2-wheel drive truck. I'm like,
the only time I would ask those questions is if it was someone less than desirable to deal with. Like if I knew it was going to fire them up, oh man, I'd ask them 20 questions. No matter they could be buying an air freshener. And I'm like, you got the year, make, and model.
What color is that F-150?
Yeah.
What color? Yeah. I go in there and get stuff, and they'd ask me questions. I'm like, dude, there's no way that you think this. How are you selling auto parts?
It's a mess anymore, man. But so he throws me in, and I mean, it was shaky, man. But it went probably the best it could for someone who had no prior experience. So that was kind of the turning point for me, where I was like, man, I just don't know about this swinging wrenches thing. Decided that after that summer that I was going to go ahead and go to school at Pittsburgh State and get an education in the automotive industry. Initially decided I was going to get a bachelor's in it, kind of learn some of the bigger end side of the industry. Spent my first 2 years in there in the technical program, actually swinging wrenches, learning all the mechanical sides of things, and just absolutely crushed it. And right about that third semester, they're flat rate tuition down there, so you can take like as many credit hours as you want, and it's the same price. So I'm like, taking advantage of that. I took 25 hours in one semester, and
that's a full semester.
That'll burn anyone out, man. It was a full-time job with nights and weekends.
Yeah.
That burned me out, and I was like, do I really want to stay for this bachelor's? And before we get into the rest of this, I'm huge into things all work out. Like, things happen for a reason.
The whole world does.
Yeah. Everything works the way it's supposed to. So my fourth semester, I'm like, I think I'm just going to get my associates and get out of here, man. So that would have been like the fall of 2019. So I decide I'm going to get my associates. My last semester's coming up, and they asked me if I want to go on an internship or on the job training. And I was like, yep, I'll do that. Got everything set up with him so I could just go back to work and still get college credit for it. It's kind of weird working somewhere where you got to pay to be there and you get paid for being there. It's almost kind of ends up in the wash.
Yeah.
But so I come back in December of 19, start working again on internship, and then COVID comes around the beginning of the next year, crashes the entire world. The school shut down. Everyone that stayed was doing all of their automotive learning online, and that's
I bet that's real successful.
Yeah, that's not my style, so I probably would have dipped out anyway.
Hey, I've only worked on virtual spark plugs. I don't know how these real ones actually work.
Dude, and that's how it was. Like, they had this whole like software that we had to download on our laptops, and like it was like VR mechanics. Like, you could pull up a car and get your little virtual voltmeter out and test different stuff. It was crazy. But
yeah, you just touch both sides of the battery, nothing happens.
But so ended up coming back. About that time was when we started discussing me pursuing working there in the front office, and eventually once Mark retired, kind of taking over. And so the plan was kind of similar to Caleb and Steve, but on a much smaller level. Mark and I were going to work together side by side for a year so he could teach me how to manage the shop. Come March, COVID hits. He's high risk. He's not sticking around to get sick and die, so he takes off. And here I am 3 months into working side by side with him. I got no idea what's going on. I'm thrown in to learn what I got to do to keep this thing afloat day to day.
So on the mechanic forefront, you guys were deemed essential, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's most dealerships got around that. If like automotive dealerships, if you just sold cars, you were pretty much closed. If you sold cars, you had a service drive connected to it, free reign, do what you want.
Yep.
You couldn't catch COVID there.
Yeah. Imaginary.
Yeah, it was. It didn't work the same.
But yeah, so I think I was pretty gracious that 2020 was the year it was, though, because it kind of gave me a chance to adapt with the direction everything else was moving into, kind of figure out how my own system needed to work for the way everything else was going. And so, I mean, the rest from there is history. We, at one point, had as many as 8 people working at the shop, and with a crew half that size, we're doing just as much and are capable of doing even more.
I think that's efficiency, having the right people. And you were talking when we were in there last time about some of the guys you have on just what they can get done, and you're like, I don't have to be on their case about it getting done. And they're like,
And getting done correctly.
Yes.
Everybody shares that same.
Which I don't think most people don't understand how much money bleeds from service departments by things not being done correctly. That if you want to chase cheap labor in service work, it will cost you more.
Yeah.
Like, that is a cardinal rule that was something that took us a while to learn when we first started in the auto space. We only had the sales forefront, and it was probably 5-6 years in that we opened up a service drive, and you start bringing in technicians, and of course we were right out the gate, we're like, why are these people making $35-$40 an hour? This guy will do it for $14 an hour. I'm like,
We just struck gold.
I'm like, there's a money printing machine back here. And then you start hiring these people, and then there's cars that leave, and then they come straight back. And it's like, you would be buying more cars, but then the cars that are sitting in your service drive are cars that you've already sold. And it was just like, it became this, and try and do the right thing. So you're like, hey, yeah, we'll cover that, blah, blah, blah. You literally just bought the car. Then the car's back in service. It's getting worked on again. Then the person has another problem. It was just like, it became a nightmare, like really, really, really quickly.
Oh, yeah. We have, and of course, in the automotive industry, no one wants to be at the shop getting their car worked on, getting ready to spend who knows how much money. And so one thing that I try to share with customers to almost comfort them is there's not a mechanic in our shop that I wouldn't let work on my own car.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal to us. And I think our standard as far as bringing people into the shop is insanely high.
Oh, yeah.
We hired a fella a few years back, and he made it 5.5 days, and we let him go because he just wasn't keeping up to the standard of the work we produce.
Yeah. And like I said, being in that space for the short stint of time I was, like, I mean, we had technicians there. I'm like, do not let them touch my vehicle. Absolutely not. And then we would sit there and we'd say that. Then all of a sudden I'm like, sitting with my dad. I'm like, why should we let them touch anyone else's vehicle? Like,
Yeah.
That as it progressed, and it, like, at the end of it, it was like, yeah, send my truck back there. Anyone back there, I'm cool with them working on it. But those dudes were making real money, and like they were real technicians that had pride in what they did.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Which, I mean, I'm really weird about who works on my vehicles, and like, I don't know, like you lose a wheel going down the road doing 80, like.
Yeah. Your truck, 5,000-6,000 pound truck. Not only
Those things are
dangerous to you.
11,000 pounds almost.
Yeah, but everybody around you too.
Oh, that's, yeah, like, and that's the crazy thing is some of the people that I know that are in the automotive tech industry, they're working on vehicles. I'm like, oh shit, that's what I'm worried about driving down the road watching other cars.
Dude, tell me about it. Coming out of Pitt State, the program, fantastic, but it was most definitely one of those you get out of it what you put in type deals. And come graduation time, there were a few kids that I was like, man, you paid your tuition, you paid your housing, you were here, but you got no business being anywhere in a shop. And they still left with the same degree I have.
Just like doctors, man.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. It's like most of these people have to be just guessing.
Keep rolling. I'm not going to the bathroom.
You turning the temperature down?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's getting a little warm in here. So last podcast, if you guys happen to watch that, probably 75% of the way through, we were smoking. Some of the guys were smoking cigars, but I wasn't, and it looked like I was smoking a cigar because I could see my breath. We had the door open, and it was probably 45 degrees out here.
That's how I like it, man. I'd rather be shivering than sweating.
I'm sweating over here. I'm like, is it just me or is it getting really hot? Yeah. Thing's blowing right on my back.
I didn't want to interrupt you guys to ask.
All right, so now where we're at business-wise, what is, I know you have the machine's moving now.
Mm-hmm.
And what I saw is very unique about you as an individual is the growth side of what you want to do. What is that vision and what does that roadmap look like that you're envisioning of where you take SK Mechanics?
So, to me, the first part of it is, I think you could ask everybody there, and they would say that they're paid well. I want everybody taken care of better.
I think that is majority of business owners as a whole. I don't think anyone out there really is like, I don't want to pay people to work for me. But it's also running a business is a
I agree,
whole new beast.
But I think there's a lot out there of the greed of
100%.
And it's like we talked about the other day. We're the ones that are responsible. We have to handle everything. We have to take care of everything. So what that's worth to everybody individually is different. How I've structured my life, I'm good with what I make. I want more for these guys and more. I want more than just finances or money for them. I want to be able to do the health care and be able to do the investments for their futures too. So it might sound weird, but they get to the end of the road, and I hope all of them make it with me and think, yeah, like this dude stuck to his word, kept everything true, and we're all good. Like we enjoyed the whole ride. It's fun at work. We try to make it the best atmosphere we can with all of us, you know. But on top of that is multiple locations, for sure.
So I think there's absolutely no question that you're going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the thing that gets you there is just finding the right people and keeping that moving. Like,
yeah, the same culture, the same mentality, the same standard of quality on the work.
Which that's something right now I'm facing that wall that, I mean, we've pretty much maxed out our office location. We've been talking about putting people in another location. And we're like, how do we keep the same culture that we have now with multiple locations?
Hire fast and fire fast.
I think so. I hope that's the answer. Like, I do feel that as you scale, like understanding how to fire is actually not something that you're ever prepared for.
Oh, yeah.
And
most definitely.
Firing, that's never something that's enjoyable.
No.
And it sucks, like, having to do that.
Yeah.
And I think understand firing faster is better for the people that are around you.
Yeah, and that's the way I look at it is moving forward with our growth and expansion. I don't want to do it. I don't want to upset anybody. I don't want to hurt their feelings. That's not my intentions. But I owe it to these guys that while this person seems like an okay individual, they don't deserve to work next to these guys that hold that incredible standard. So I owe it to them to be the mean guy.
100%. And I feel like I've fallen more into that in the beginning. Like, I mean, I've had to make some pretty hard decisions in MMG in the few years I've had it. That the hardest decisions I've ever made in my life. That most people thought the hardest decision I would ever make would step away from a very comfortable paying job that I had to open this. And I'm like, I promise you I've came up against a lot more difficult situations since then.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also, I look at it's like, that's why I've been put in the position that I'm in. That's why I'm in the seat that I'm in, is to make those decisions. And you can't make them out of thinking about yourself and how it makes you feel and whatever emotion that is trying to control you. You have to think about it as you're moving the ship forward. Is that person helping move this ship in the right direction, or are they dragging everyone down?
Yeah.
And it's keeping it that simple all the time actually kind of helps. That I look at it all as simple as that. I just look at this huge ship that's moving, and I'm like, does every person that's here moving this forward in the correct direction, or is there anyone that pulls it back?
Yeah.
And one person can pull 4 people back. Where it's like, in the car business, that's something I see all the time is you get cancer in somewhere. I mean, it spreads like wildfire.
Yeah, on the production, the efficiency, the mentality, get one bad apple. Yep.
Which that's the thing I think I'm most fearful about at multiple locations, that I think I study people so much that have built huge cultures that have locations everywhere, but that comes with building that structure from the top, that structure of those core people. Like I've thought about that I have people within our walls that can go take on that location, even though they don't want to be outside of that core group, but it's not as a negative, it's as a positive that they are the person to run that somewhere else. So you look at what Fursell has done.
Yeah.
I mean, that dude has great top side management. Like, and you find those top side managers, and it's like you build people to be owners within a company. And like when you build that when you have those other locations, you're going to have owners within inside the company that run those locations, that build that culture under them.
Yeah. And like you said, that is the most difficult decision you have to make that not everybody gets, because they're not there making that decision, but it impacts everything else below it.
And it's funny, and we deal with a lot of business owners, and I have a lot of friends that all want to pipe in when I'm making decisions. That I don't know what the perfect decision is. I wish I had some book that said, like, I opened it up and I was like, page 4.
That's the thing is nobody does. It's like we talked about the other day, that when you get down to it and you really analyze everybody, they're just winging it.
Yeah.
They're making the most calculated, educated decision they can, and they're rolling with it. And
that's at all levels.
They will all have their opinions on it, but it doesn't matter because they're not the one pulling the trigger.
Caleb, are you saying that when you acquired SK from your uncle, he didn't give you like the secret instruction manual to business?
I saw it in his office. It was in a glass case.
I swear I saw it.
No, most definitely not.
He must have forgot to pass that along to you or something.
Yeah.
You need to call him and ask him if you can get that.
See if he still got it.
Yeah.
Get a hold of that thing.
No, before we're talking about Alex Rosi, and like when you start off reading his book, he talks about there's a screenshot of his bank account having like $1,000 in it. And it's like, I have that same screenshot from MMG when I started, and I ran pretty much to the bottom. And that book was one thing that like kept me going, that I was like, someone else was in the same spot that pushed to the top. That it's like when you look at those things, like he didn't have a handbook of how it was done. He was going through new waters that there was no outline of what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're doing the same thing. Like everyone at MMG is doing the same thing. And it's like every single day we have, who knows what comes up tomorrow.
Yeah.
I have no earthly idea.
It's that grit and that fortitude that, a lot of times the team looks up to you and they want someone to make that decision, and that's your job to do. And a lot of times it's scary stuff, and people are like, man, I don't know how you're brave enough, or you have the courage, you're not scared. But that's the point, is that you're the one that's willing to make that hard decision regardless.
Yeah, it has to be made. And my deal is, as scale happens, you get to that point of making decisions that you can't get it to where everyone agrees with them.
Never.
And it's like, I look at it as whatever I feel best for 5 years, which that's something I think is very different about, I see business owners that think in a short term, and I see business owners that think in a long term, and I see two completely different players in a field. That it's like people that are making these short term decisions make rash, fast decisions that end up hurting them and hindering them in long term growth. That when you're making those long decisions, like there's always that emotion that comes in.
Oh yeah.
That it's like you have to learn how to block that emotion and say, this is an emotional decision.
Purely logical.
This is what is logical to get us 5 years from now. That like I tell people all the time, there's this roadmap inside my head of where like MMG is supposed to be and where like everyone in it's supposed to be. And it's this huge monstrosity that we've built. And the vision's so clear to me. Like, I see it as clear as day. I've reverse engineered the whole entire thing in my head. I know exactly what we need to do every month to how to get there. And it's like, and that's what I get up every morning thinking about. Like, this needs to be done to get to here, to get to here, to get to here. I'm like, and then here's where more people come in. And it's like, it's mass chaos inside my head, but I know how to get there. And I'm like, I'm telling everyone, I'm like, just trust me, I can get us there. I'm like, but when I make these decisions, I'm not thinking about the decision now. I'm thinking about that decision 5 years from now.
Yeah, you're thinking about the result.
Yes.
In 5 years.
So it's like that result, and sometimes it can seem like a good idea at the time, but then it's like when you really put that to paper and you figure out, like, what does that lead to this, to this, to this, it's a domino effect.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you can end up somewhere that you had no intention of ending up. Because you were trying to drive this way instead of starting from here and coming back from here. You just decide to try to navigate. That's like, hey, go to Florida, and you just start driving. You're just like, oh. Or you start in Florida, and they tell you, hey, this is exactly how you get back to here. And then it's like, you can actually figure out what that pathway looks like.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was probably a super shitty analogy. Like, I don't think that made any sense. But
No, I get it.
it's, once again, it never really makes sense in my head. Like, I see the vision, I see how to get there. But the decisions that are made to get there aren't set in stone. Those are new obstacles.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that you say these people have a judgment on the decisions you're making, but the thing is, at the end of the day, no one knows.
Yeah.
It's up to you to hold the wheel on the ship.
Just hope. I tell everyone in MMG, I'm either going to take the motherfucker straight to the bottom of the ocean or we're going to take it to the moon.
Yeah, it's the same we talked about the other day.
It's not just going to sail along. Like, I look at life as you're either going to grow or you're going to die. One of the two.
Yeah.
That I never built
You're
this
either
to
getting
just
better or you're getting worse.
I never.
Well, you're gonna die. It's just how much you grow before that.
That's a guarantee for everyone.
Yeah.
To where it's like, I look at it as I have no intention of this just being okay.
Yeah.
I've never been that way. I don't want something that they're like, oh, that's just a mediocre marketing company. Like, that's not me.
Yeah.
To where it's like,
But that's the thing that makes it all worth it, is that there is no sure path, there is no guarantee. If you knew where it was going to end up, ruins all the fun.
100%. The rides, the journey is where all the fun's at.
Yeah.
And it's,
So having that unknown,
which I think the coolest thing too, which I'm waiting for someone to do it in the auto space, is doing something so crazy different. That, like, and I have no earthly idea what it is. Like, when we stepped into the marketing forefront, like, everyone told us every single thing we were doing was wrong. Like, your colors are wrong, your logo's wrong. They're like, you need to be blue and yellow. Like, the trucks, like, my brother and I sat at a dealership. We call them the blue suits. They would roll up in their Porsches and suits and everything, sell us on marketing. And normally we just got boned on whatever they sold us. So I was like, this sucks. So I was like, why is there not, like, someone else out there? And I started calling marketing companies. I'd set them all at the same time. I'd schedule like 3 marketing appointments at the same time. And they would show up to the dealership. And I'm like, oh, yeah, meeting in the conference room. And they would all be like looking like, hey, they all knew who like they were. I was like, yeah, like, I just want to see, like, what any of you guys, who's the best in here? What do you offer that they don't? Or, like, what do you offer that they don't? And, dude, it would, like, really just cripple people. But it's like they were all doing the exact same thing, expecting different results.
insanity.
Yep. And I was like, to date, with all of what this is, my biggest thing I drive for every day is just being different. I feel like it's worked okay for us so far. Like,
Yeah.
but it's like, I just don't like being the same as everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, I made my post looking for a marketing company for us, and there was probably 10 replies on there, and well over half were MMG.
Yeah. And it's the thing that we have came into a space that, like, I believe the blue collar space never had someone to help them.
Someone that gets it.
Yeah.
That was
actually
the big
cared.
thing. The big thing with us rolling with you guys was your background.
Yeah. And it's like, I think the background helps. Like, a lot of us here, like, Ricky's been in the car business. Like, I mean, a lot of us have been in the car business and understand it. But it's also just truly caring about the people that you work with. That I never felt that from a marketing company we ever worked with. And it was like, we were a number, and then I always call him Chad, but Chad that came in and sold us in the blue suit, like, you never saw that dude after he sold us.
Yeah.
Ghost. You try to call him, never answer. I think he just blocked our number after he sold us. Like, but they just their whole business model is outsell a 12-month cancellation. I was like, I hate this. So it's like, when we've like went in there, like, there's people that we become friends, and like, it's a relationship that we never plan on taking on an account and being like, oh yeah, with you for a month.
Yeah,
like,
good luck.
No, it's like, we plan on working with people for a long period of time and becoming a leg of their company. So it's like, I very much enjoy the side of getting to work with companies that are growth mind oriented.
Yeah.
That I've picked that up instantly when I got there.
Yeah.
And I had no earth idea what I was even walking into. And it's funny how many meetings I go to and people are like, you do a lot of research? I'm like, no. And they're like, what? I'm like, I don't know what you guys are looking for. Like, I could do all the research in the world and show up and you're like, hey, I'm looking just to get employees. All right, great. That's a whole different marketing strategy. And like, I know marketing agencies that bring a proposal in that every single meeting they go to with like a big presentation and everything. I used to get pitched those all the time. And I'm like, yeah, you really don't know our business model, do you, at all? So it's like, you have that, and then you have like, and I see it across different industries about how similar what we are doing actually aligns with other businesses on the same thing. They just haven't had a way to put it to market. You guys are talking about doing the Friends or doing the Office episodes like at your shop. I'm like, that's genius. That's what people will love to see. And that's where you'll get business all the time, that people know who you are, because you just willingly went and got people's attention with something like that. Speechless.
Speechless.
Mic drop.
So we were working on content today. We're working on rolling out all kinds of marketing stuff with you guys. We're going to go after getting locations, doing all this. What does 6 months from now look like scalability in your current location?
I would say by that point we should hopefully be looking for another tech out in the shop.
Yeah.
My hope would be to be busy enough that we have to bring someone else on to keep everything moving.
Yeah, and that's kind of the goal, and it's nice being the kind of float around guy, because like I was telling you, I can jump in there and handle the tech work until we get to the point where I'm like, we are consistently overloaded, and it's at the point where it is hindering efficiency. So at this point, we pull another guy on. And I think our current shop location, I have some goals or ideas of adding on to the shop to be able to get it to the point where it can handle more. But I think 3 technician, and then a helper / lube guy, and a helper for Brandon, and we're at the point where we're rolling and we can max out that shop. And then after that point is when we look for more location.
I like it.
So I would say 6 months, Brandon hit the nail on the head of, hey, you've been in here grinding with the guys in the trenches. It's time to pull another guy in.
So we'll be able to do that for sure with some good marketing. So we hit that in 6 months. We're going to have another podcast then about where you guys are there, what worldwide expansion looks like. But at the end of each podcast, I just looked down and saw how fast we went through an hour.
I told you guys it was going to go fast.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like a long time, but it's really not.
Everyone's like, oh, an hour? Really? I'm like, trust me, it like starts and all of a sudden it's done.
Yeah.
At the end of each podcast, we go through and we ask someone if they could go back to their 20-year-old self, what would one word of advice that you would give yourself? And either one can take the wheel first.
Which, as Brandon would say, is a lot longer for Caleb than it would be for Brandon.
Like, that was like a lifetime ago for Caleb. If you can think back that far, Caleb.
Go ahead.
20 was a pretty crazy time for me. That was right at the start of right when I moved home from Pitt State.
You have the whole world figured out at that point, right?
Oh yeah, man, I knew everything. Are you kidding me? I had a piece of paper with my name on it. No, I would say the biggest piece of advice for me at that point would be just not being so consumed with what everyone else is thinking what I should be doing with my life, or being worried about how people might perceive my plan for my future. I spent a lot of nights, a lot of days just kind of thinking about how I make everything work where everyone ends up happy in the end. And kind of like we talked about earlier with all my fitness stuff and my weight loss stuff, that was kind of a healing time for me to realize that in the grand scheme of things, no one else's opinion's ever going to matter.
I couldn't agree with that more.
Do it my way and do it right.
Hey, he got a mic dropped right out the gate.
Yeah. Well, that's why I got him on my team.
I love it.
Oh, let's see. 20.
Long time ago.
While you're coming up with that, I'm going to excuse myself to the restroom.
Oh, bro, we only got minutes left.
Oh, well then I'm hanging out.
Caleb's hitting this and
Yeah.
we're done.
I'm cooking up some good here. Come on. Yeah, I mean, I think mine would be pretty close in line with Brandon. It would be just keep going. There's all the haters or the naysayers that'll say you should be doing it this way, you should be doing it that way. Oh, if it were me. But it's not then. So that's the thing at the end of the day. Stay on your purpose, keep pursuing it, and you'll attract the right people.
Always press forward.
Yep.
Someone will always tell you a different way to do it. That's a guarantee.
Always.
So
You can crush it, and they tell you, I'd have done it this way, and I'd have done it better. Oh, okay.
Exactly. Very much enjoy both of you guys coming on today. A lot of great insights. Like I said, you guys are going to kill it. I'm really looking forward to our partnership in the marketing forefront. I like partnering with people that we get along with well.
Yeah.
And I knew it was something right out the gate that was going to be solid. Any final thoughts from you down there, Ricky?
No, it was good having you guys on here.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what our journey together looks like.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I
It's going to
agree.
be fun.
So
I appreciate you having us on, and definitely give credit to Ricky for crushing it today on some of our video content.
That was, dude, I didn't even take my camera out of the case. Our team crushed it.
Yeah.
Ricky and the boys make it happen all the time.
Yeah.
And we
They were all
got
great.
ladies on the team too, so we got to give it to the ladies too.
Excellent.
Also, Pitt State alumni.
Also, Pitt
That's
State
right.
alumni.
Go Willows.
I'm a Fort Hays guy over here. So.
I went to Northwest, so I mean,
Big, is it NA? I don't even remember what the conference was.
NAIA.
yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys are rivals.
Now the peanut gallery is going crazy over there. But Brandon's got to go to the bathroom, okay?
Dude, holding it for a minute.
So
He's got a stopwatch going. Better get out of here.
we're gonna end the M3 podcast on that. Once again, thank you guys.
Thank you.
We're gonna put all the links below for SK Mechanic. It was auto repair. SK Mechanic
Just
auto.
Yep.
SK Mechanic. We're gonna put Facebook, website, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. It'll all be built out. There's gonna be a bunch of badass videos, and if you want to go see the sick ass car that Caleb's got, check it out there
The
too.
Mullet Bullet in action.
The Mullet Bullet in
Bullet
action. So that's M3 podcast. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the M3 Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Want to learn more? Check us out on Instagram at Moss Marketing Group, on Facebook at Moss Marketing 58, or on our website at mossmarketinggroup.com.